Yo, what's up? This is Mikey Dab, and welcome to the Hype Report. Each week we recap the biggest stories from HYPEBEAST directly from the minds of the editorial team. I'm here to connect the dots. Let's get into this week's show.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Robert Marshall, senior editor over at HYPEBEAST, covering mostly footwear and sports.
Good morning, Bob.
What's up? Actually, it's afternoon, so...
Is it? Oh my God, we've been in here quite some time.
Get on it.
What are we doing today? What are we talking about?
So today we're going to talk about the IAAF and their current investigation over a Nike sneaker. So the IAAF, first of all, is the International Association of Athletics Federation, basically the governing body of international sports. You know, the Olympics go to them for drug testing and so on. The shoe in question is the Nike ZoomX Vaporfly, but more specifically, a model, a prototype that was worn by Eliud Kipchoge.
The dude that just broke the marathon record?
Yep. So that's the thing. It's not an official record. He did run a sub 2-hour marathon. It was 1 hour, 59 minutes and like 40 seconds or so. But it wasn't an official record because it wasn't a sanctioned race. It was kind of just running. He had 40 some pacemakers that was helping him guide, 7 at a time that was helping him run. You know, keeping a pace, obviously. And he even had a car in front with a laser guider that was basically saying, this is what your times are. Like, you need to catch up to this line to get to that point. So, again, it wasn't an official record, but and a shoe, again, is a prototype. They're basically calling it, like, the Alpha Fly. But it wasn't. But, again, it is opening up a lot of questions because the Olympics are coming up.
The shoe is designed to have a carbon fiber plate in the midsole. They added more foam for the bounce, and it gives back as you run, which is fair, I guess.
Right.
Can be a little...
But now you're talking about the retail version. The shoe that he was running in had 3 carbon fiber plates.
Okay.
So basically the sole of the shoe was broken up into just obviously, you know, pretty dense foam, like a little bit of foam, a full carbon fiber plate. The forefoot, underneath that carbon fiber plate was an air zoom pocket, then another small carbon fiber plate that was only covering the forefoot, and then another zoom pocket, and then another small carbon fiber plate.
Oof.
And then again, underneath all of that, on the heel was just large foam.
So like for those of you listening to kind of gauge this, you're basically talking about a springboard inside of the sneaker. So each air pocket pressed up against a carbon fiber plate gives you a bounce factor. So every time you press on the forefront of your foot, you're getting more spring back to push or propel you forward.
So the idea is that it's giving him more energy in his return, so he's able to bounce back. The IAAF is investigating it mostly because other runners are like, well, this is an unfair advantage. And that's reading the Times article that came out a day or two ago. They reference certain rules by the IAAF, and basically it's very vague. The rules that they have in place is that the shoes may not supply an unfair advantage, that's in the quote, and must be reasonably, again, quote, reasonably available. There's no specifics about unfair advantage. I imagine reasonably available basically means it's a retail marketed shoe.
Yeah. Can I get it anywhere?
Exactly. So, I mean, it all comes down to not only just this record-breaking run, again, unofficially record-breaking run, but over the last 3 years since the Vaporfly was introduced, the marathon record has been best 5 times. Each of those times have been by Nike athletes wearing a Vaporfly shoe. So
the record breaker.
Exactly. So, you know, the marketing ploy is not necessarily a ploy. It's very true that it's a sub 2 shoe, and they've been pushing that for the last 3 years since they released it and unveiled it. The question is like, how much is too much?
I mean, okay, so I'm gonna take a leap here in the opposite direction. Oscar Pistorius, which was the Olympian with the carbon fiber legs, he had both of his feet amputated at 11 months old. The IAAF, they had like it was like a legal battle for like 2 or 3 years in 2013, if I'm not mistaken, and then in 2014, he was allowed into not the Olympics, but into actual trials. So they let him into the realm with the carbon fiber legs. I feel like this is on the same realm.
I wouldn't necessarily put that. That's like altering your body, right? You know, I would put that on a level, and no offense to him and what he's been able to accomplish, because Lord knows I wouldn't have been able to.
Well, he's also in jail.
But I would put that on a level of, you know, performance enhancing drugs almost.
I completely concur.
Yeah, not on the same level, but on the same field. What I would equal this to, the shoe, is like baseball bats, tennis rackets, where like corked bats, or tennis rackets that are maybe wound different, or even more specifically, in 2010, I don't think it was the IAAF or maybe it was the Olympics, but they banned certain polyurethane swimming suits because they offered an unfair advantage in swimming. And I think that's where these shoes kind of come into play. But the question is like, what is an unfair advantage? I think, is it just a matter, are other brands upset that they don't have the patents that Nike has, and we all know Nike has long been known for innovation. That's what they've been founded on with the waffle shoe, providing runners,
that was their
an
thing.
Unfair advantage, I guess.
Literally the thing when Nike started was track and field. So I feel like maybe this is that gray area as of right now, until they can get like I guess a correct test field of like what the actual differences can or will be with the shoe. I mean, a couple of records is fine. Could be the athlete is fantastic. Like,
correct. Yeah.
You can't take away from the athlete at this point, but if you have
Kipchoge is he's a record breaker himself. He's phenomenal. He's 34 years old, but
that means nothing.
Yeah, by traditional standards in marathon running, like he's not he's just a veteran.
He's the ideal build also. So it's like I definitely understand that he probably would have, with all of that help, he definitely would have anyway, regardless. Right. But I mean, with others breaking records as well in that short amount of time and all wearing the same shoe, I could understand. But I mean, like you're also in an era where like training is at an utmost high. Yeah. And like the rigorous training that people are going through and methods that they're using to train are just superior than they used to be. So an advancement in all around, I don't know.
Yeah. I think what they would have to do is the IAAF would have to just define whatever those rules are, really. And I think, maybe one of the best ways, and this was mentioned in that New York Times article, they interviewed, a former marathon runner and now like a professor at a major college, that maybe they just need to implement a height restriction on soles. Right now I do think that the Vaporfly comes in at like 36 centimeters, and most shoes were around like 31. So maybe that's where it kind of begins is a restriction for that. But again, then it's like you're still that's open to interpretation as far as like what can be inside of that sole now. Exactly. And I think then now you have to kind of define what would be a quote unquote springboard like material or additive to a sole. Like, would that be carbon fiber? I don't know. Carbon fiber could just be help ease the cushioning of it rather than being a springboard. There's
shock
so much
absorption,
exactly. So I mean, it's such a big gray area in this, but the IAAF has said that they're going to come out with some sort of report within the next 2 months because they have to. The Olympics are very close away. So, and if Nike has the okay to use these shoes, runners are going to be wearing that shoe.
Absolutely.
Again, it just kind of comes back to the other brands are going to be upset that they don't have that patent, and now they're going to be scrambling to kind of make up for it.
Or figure out a way to kind of replicate that same propulsion.
Exactly.
I don't know, man. I'm a little... I don't care. You know what it is? Like, it's sneaker at the end of the day. Like, absolutely. I mean, I listen, I might have bad knee, I've got to whatever. And wearing something that helps me run isn't a terrible thing for me. And I realize it's the Olympics, but there are a lot of other factors than just the sneakers.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in 1960, the Olympic gold winner ran barefooted from Ethiopia. Imagine that dude just lining up next to you with no shoes on.
What's up, bud?
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, do we go back to that kind of regulation where we all wear the same shoe? Like, that's not going to fly in track and field at all, especially when there's so much money in it. And that's where, brands like New Balance, Saucony, and
really prevail.
Yeah. And the like that are able to make up for the ground that like Nike and Adidas is able to kind of run away with, no pun intended.
Yeah. Lifestyle is real out here.
For sure.
So I have to like follow this like a lot more intently.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like I need to know more about what they're going to do or what they plan to do with this, because it's actually pretty intriguing.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, if it turns out that the shoe is the real factor why like these people are breaking records, like Nike is in store for like a whirlwind of more accolades.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Darren Ravel tweeted about it earlier today or yesterday, basically saying that it was like, oh man, if Nike, if they find that if the IAAF, bans this shoe, Nike's gonna, it's gonna hurt Nike a lot. I'm like, no, that's gonna this is gonna help them. Because
remember when they banned a Jordan 1? I don't know.
Exactly,
Really?
Exactly. That's a great point. Because for the average consumer that's not necessarily running a marathon, be like, yeah, no, I'm gonna get that to run my 5K, or just gonna be like, wow, Nike really doing it in technology. Yeah. I remember APL. Remember that sneaker brand from like 5 years ago that had. Their sneaker was banned from the NBA for having that springboardy sole. the same thing. Like, it helped them for a while. I mean, they were making some money. People were buying their shoes. I mean, after a bit, they kind of fell off the map with the designs.
If I'm not playing for the NBA, then like, I can wear whatever I want.
Exactly. So, I mean, the brand itself kind of didn't capitalize that on the long term, but, you know, it certainly helped them in the media. And Nike, obviously, you know, is more about like immediate help, you know what I mean? Because the long term, they're going to be here. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, especially with the Olympics coming up, what they're going to decide on, because it's really going to, you know, make a difference.
I just can't wait to see people running up the West Side Highway with these on, like, I'm beating cars. Like,
Word, yeah. I mean, but this prototype version, if it does make it to the market, it's like some
cost.
Is it a cost? You know, well above $300. I can imagine. Even the Vaporflies are.
Listen, if you're going to buy an Adapt BB,
word.
I mean, you're not going to break a cap on that anyway. So I mean, and those sell out, but they got there. So
exactly, yeah. So it's going to be interesting just to see, because the trickle down effect on this is going to be wildly interesting. How, you know, if they allow this shoe, how does it affect the other brands? If they don't, you know, how does it affect Nike and so on?
I mean, we're honestly, like, if you think about it right now, like, what we're talking about is if the IAAF decides that they're going to ban this shoe, Nike's going to make it regardless and sell it for $500, and people will be running in them.
Sure, absolutely.
I don't care about what happens next. Like, that is a realistic thing that is going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
No matter how you look at it. Like,
yeah.
I'm saying it now, right now. That's what's happening.
Yeah, I think they're going to go to the market with or without. Yeah, because I mean, there's not necessarily. Can't ban it from just selling at Foot Locker or wherever. You can still sell the shoe. It's just, you can't run a sanctioned marathon event with it.
Well, we could run it like the what is that, the 990 from New Balance for models on the runway and dads in Long Island, like, you know what I'm saying, for runners on the West Side Highway or people walking to get groceries. Like, it doesn't make a difference, you know.
For sure.
I coined that, Nike. Don't you dare.
I'm just curious how it would like feel just walking in it, because it's not a shoe made for that.
Just for power walking.
Yeah, just 3 carbon fiber plates just going to the grocery store. It's intense, but I mean, you'll see it for sure.
100%.
Just a hard flex.
What are those? Don't worry about it.
They're banned from the Olympics.
Just know.
Yeah.
All right, Bob.
You already know.
Catch you later.
Peace, brother.
For the latest in footwear news, you can check out HYPEBEAST Kicks on Instagram or go to hypebeast.com/footwear.
Hey, what's going on? This is Keith Estiler, our editor at HYPEBEAST.
Good morning. What's up, buddy?
What's up, man? So the standout news in art this week is Banksy opening his gross domestic product store, the online shop. This is a follow-up to his actual physical store in London's Croydon neighborhood. And he's selling a range of merchandise that we've never seen before. Actually, we have seen some ones, like Stormzy's bulletproof vest that he wore at Glastonbury Festival. This whole, I guess, presentation, both physical and online, is a response to a legal battle that he had with a greeting card company.
Which is funny, by the way.
Yeah. That is trying to secure the trademark on the name Banksy so they can sell branded merchandise. And for him to do this is to kind of secure his own image and brand. So like a part of it, I think a part of the actual court hearing was that they probably would have assumed that he wasn't going to show up just because he doesn't show himself. Yeah. So I feel like that was kind of a ploy on his actual stand for art. Yeah. Like his perspective, they were like, oh, they were trying to use that against him. So most people that don't know that are following right now are just hearing about this lawsuit. So they basically were branding stuff for Banksy that wasn't Banksy branded. And then what they wanted to do was take the copyright to Banksy's name and then use it to sell that product. So that way it was like, well, most people don't know. It's almost like Supreme in Argentina. Yeah, so to speak. So if you want to correlate it that way. So that's where we are right now. So he had to do this store more or less to kind of put product into the world. Mm-hmm. And solidify his name as Banksy. Yeah. Cool. What are we selling? There's different price points. I know that. Yeah. And he alluded to a couple of things that he wanted to, like guidelines for people to follow. Yeah, he did. So let's start off with the items, actually. So there's, a bunch of homewares like mugs, rugs, and they start at 10 pounds. And then you have like those standout pieces, like the Stormzy vest. You have a triptych of his flower thrower, which is very dope, by the way. Yeah, super and dope. Those are around like $500 to $850, which isn't terrible. It's not terrible. To be honest, no, not at all. But he's saying that wealthy, affluent art collectors should refrain from buying any of these pieces first. Maybe that's a sign of like what's to come in the store. But he does have some guidelines for those who are looking to purchase any one of these products. there is a question that customers have to answer. And the question is, why does art matter? And he crossed out the why specifically in the question, just because it's the signature witty Banksy way of doing things. And these responses are going to be judged by this comedian named Adam Bloom, who's urging customers to make their answers, quote unquote, amusing, informative, or enlightening as possible. And Banksy added to that, we can't ever weed out all the people who just want to flip for profit, but we can weed out unfunny ones.
Which is, I think, a cool way of monetizing art for himself as something I didn't think he was ever going to do.
Yeah.
And a way to keep it kind of organic to himself.
Yeah.
So to speak. So and they also said that, it's not going to be fast. These are one-off pieces. Don't expect it to be in a rush order kind of deal, which I also appreciate too. So it's not like they're just like, okay, we're gimmicking this to be like, all right, we're going to open it and pretend like we're just going to do a couple of things and then blast the world with a whole bunch of product and make a quick buck. So like, I appreciate the way that he's actually facing this head on. And I wanted to make sure that people understood that there was like a lawsuit about the copyright on his name. Yeah. So that way people understood that like he's doing this because he has to, not because he wants to.
Nah, he wants to. Yeah. And given the situation, it's definitely more personal than I'd imagined from, Banksy, especially with these guidelines. It becomes a little bit more of an intimate, like raw sort of like transaction than, like I agree what you said, than just like buying a product.
Yeah.
There's more of a personal sort of engagement towards the art as like owning the art rather than, as like a commercial product. And I think that just comes full circle with what his art is all about.
Yeah, agreed. I really appreciate the fact that they have the comedian just going over the I like the fact that it's going to take a couple of weeks or even 2 months to get the piece, just because like I feel like they're actually taking the time to read those comments and make sure that they're deliberating correctly as to who's going to get product. And like they said, you can't weed everybody out, which isn't like the main objective, but it kind of is at this juncture in time,
Have you checked out the actual store, the online shop?
No, I have not.
You haven't?
I looked at the pieces from the post, so to speak, and plus, like, I'm pretty familiar. Plus, it's not really my world. I like the ideology behind his art.
Yeah.
And thinking about what it is that he's actually saying, like the Tony the Tiger rug with diabetes, like that's crazy. It makes sense, and it correlates directly to, issues that nobody wants to face. Like, little breakfast, have some cereal. Meanwhile, like you're giving your child diabetes with that amount of sugar every day until whatever, And there was actually a clip, I believe there was an Instagram clip of like people's responses to the store itself that's in London. And people like looking at the art and trying to decipher. And some people were like really receptive, like, oh, I totally understand where he's going. And some people were like, I just don't get it. Yeah. And that's like the temperature when it comes to art sometimes, where people just don't understand and they just keep it moving, Yeah,
it's I think that's what makes it his art so polarizing. If it could elicit like completely two different responses.
Absolutely. It's like listening to a comedian, like one that's super raw that people find edgy and funny. And then some people are like, that's offensive. Yeah. It's either going to hit home or it's going to hurt the home,
Yeah. So I want to ask you, if you were to answer that question, why does art matter, or does art matter?
I think it matters on on a multitude of levels. One, for what we were just talking about, just to kind of shed light on topics that people might not want to shed light on without it being so abrasive, so to speak. Like you can watch CNN and hear about things and get the facts, and people don't understand facts. They're like, oh, what does that number mean? Who's saying it? Who's this person? Is he Republican? Is that? And then it's all these other factors that kind of flow into their judgment based on things that they may have heard, not things that they actually know. I think art, because it's so subjective, like we always say, like you can face those topics head on from your own perspective, and depending on your perspective, it can really open people's eyes to a real issue. And that's why I think art matters. Yeah. In certain aspects.
It's mirroring, society's ills or society's positives.
Absolutely.
I think I agree with you that it should sort of elicit a response.
I think any good art, even I'm never going to get lost in a oil painting of just different colors bleeding down the wall, unless maybe I'm going through something emotional. That's just not my perspective. I want to be able to almost read the art for myself, where I can make my own assessment on what it is that I'm looking at and my own depiction of what the art is. Yeah. That's what my takeaway from art, or most art.
Yeah. Stay tuned for more updates on gross domestic product, Banksy's online shop.
I definitely want to keep up on that. I definitely want to see how the lawsuit kind of weans itself out or weighs itself out.
Or if it does weight off, or if, they reissue it.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah.
That's like the most curious part for me because I feel bad that it's even happening. But I'm gonna stay up to date with you, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Hypebeast,
Cool, man.
Keep it up.
All right.
For the latest in art and design news, follow HYPEBEAST Art on Instagram or go to hypebeast.com/art.
Hey, this is Isaac Rouse, Associate Editor for HYPEBEAST. We are talking Breaking Bad, El Camino. Spoiler alert, we're going to get into the original series, Breaking Bad series. We're going to talk about Better Call Saul, the spinoff series, and of course, we're going to talk about the spinoff film, El Camino. How did you feel about El Camino?
Considering, let's give the listeners a little backstory here, if we should, or if we can.
Sure.
I stopped watching Breaking Bad midway through season 3. I tried binge watching it, like we spoke about, and I just couldn't get into it. I hear season 5 is fantastic, but I couldn't wait a whole nother season and a half to get to it.
Okay.
Now I do like Jesse Pinkman. What was that? Not Fast and Furious. It was
Need for Speed.
Need for Speed. Fantastic. He's very loud, a little obnoxious, but he gets his point across. The movie itself was good. It actually made me want to go back and watch whatever it is that I missed, which is a lot apparently because he's on the run. So basically, like they were talking about an alternate ending. How'd you feel about that? The idea of the alternate ending?
Well, the creator Vince Gilligan, that was originally his ending, was basically to have Jesse Pinkman go free at the end of season 5 from his imprisonment because he was imprisoned, and at the end of El Camino to end up back in imprisonment via going to jail. I think it's poetic, and like as a creator / writer, I can see like gravitating towards the more poetic ending. But apparently his girlfriend, I guess at the time, or still his girlfriend, talked him out of it completely. He was like, you can't take this character from imprisonment and throw him in imprisonment. Like it's daunting and it's not.
I'm not gonna lie, I would have thrown my remote at the TV.
Yeah.
If he would they would have given me this whole like in a hole, gets out, finally gets, and then like. So they were alluding to the fact that like he wasn't going to be able to sleep throughout the entire movie. Yeah. And then finally being at peace when he gets locked up for real.
Yeah.
I would have been super annoyed. That would have been first and foremost. Like I don't want to see that. So at some point you want a happy ending, and like you said, if you start off with imprisonment, you can't end with imprisonment because it just doesn't sit well.
I mean, it doesn't sit well as far as it being a television show, but realistically speaking, he should be in jail. Like the cops roll up as he's escaping. Even in the movie, all he does is like pull off to the side and like dozens of cops roll by him. And I think there's even a scene even like bigger than that extrapolates that, where it's just freaking trucks and like freaking helicopters and all this shit like heading towards wherever he goes after he gets out of prison. Well, gets out of his imprisonment from the neo-Nazis. I feel like it would make more sense, especially in the context of Breaking Bad, the show, where like that show handles everything pretty realistically. I mean, there's a few liberties. I mean, like in season 1, Walter White throwing down the little rock and like making a giant explosion. Like that's cool as fuck, and it's real in the terms of using science, like using the applications of science realistically. But still in all, like that's just like fan servicey cool shit.
I mean, you have to do things like that in series, especially on FX. Like you have to figure out like what you can do that's going to keep the audience's attention without it being on HBO or Stars. Like they can do whatever they want. We have dragons and wolves. Like what do you have? I have a rock that explodes. Like they have to make it cooler than it should be.
Sometimes you have to sacrifice the realism of the story you're telling and the tone that you're trying to set to like produce a better product. In this case, it's giving Jesse a happy ending. He's just this character that's just been tortured and broken down since season 1 and all the way to this movie. He's just like a deterioration of his former self. And as far as a product and as far as trying to complete his arc, that's a great way to go, is how they ended it, as opposed to just putting him back in jail.
An extreme amount of callbacks in the movie.
Yeah, a lot of fans feel like even though there's like a lot of callbacks, that this is a completely unnecessary movie.
Honestly, for me, as someone who didn't finish it, like I got a lot more than I probably paid for by watching this. Like one is the recap before the movie starts. So if you didn't see it, like they pretty much blazed through quite a bit of stuff. And if you're familiar with the characters because you watched loosely, it ties everything in for you. It very, very abruptly. It's like the Cliff Notes version.
Right, but a lot of people are saying the movie doesn't really add anything to the pre-existing story. And it doesn't really leave any kind of new ways to look at it going back. All it is just like a nice little like victory lap for the Jesse Pinkman character as well as the creator Vince Gilligan. Because I feel like, honestly speaking, this show is, in terms of this decade, the most influential and one of the best, if not the best show to come out of like the 2010s.
We're going to agree to disagree. That's perfectly fine.
What show would you say has just been so revered this decade?
I mean, by the masses is what you're going to go by here.
Sure, yeah.
I'm going to go by just my sheer enjoyment in watching something. It's going to sound rather silly. Game of Thrones, just based on the tattoo that's on my leg. Season 8 really destroyed it for me. Not going to lie to you. I feel like it destroyed it for a lot of people. But leading up until that last season, the writing, the acting, obviously the CGI that's in the show itself, the directions they can go from it, the amount of people that it's touched, I think it's just one of those shows.
You're preaching to the choir, Mikey. I feel like Game of Thrones is going to be the last appointment-based television show to really matter. Like, it'll never be a moment like Game of Thrones again, where we're moving to all this streaming and on-demand type kind of programming. But like you said, like it just kind of fumbled that ending there, and at a pace to kind of become my favorite show of the decade
of all time,
maybe of all time, past Breaking Bad,
next to the Boondock Saints.
he keeps calling the Boondocks, the animated series, the Boondock Saints, people, just to mess with me.
I don't know what he's talking about. I thought it was the Boondock Saints. Proceed.
But it just really fumbled that ending, and despite all the money that's been poured into the series,
franchise, if you will,
franchise in general. And the fact that there's going to be so many spin-off series now.
I'm not mad about that. Let's clarify. I am not mad about the spin-offs as long as George R.R. Martin is writing them.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's the bigger part here, I think. That's the larger takeaway.
And that remains to be seen, I believe. But I feel like Vince Gilligan, he's crafted a really great world also outside of Breaking Bad. I mean, based solely on Breaking Bad, but you got the Better Call Saul series.
I mean, you've had a lot of like iterations, like the Pollo Locos.
Yeah, you can still go so many different directions. Like the next, Netflix can give them another shot to do a movie, and it could be my man bugging out.
I have a feeling that it might actually come to that. This is probably like a test run. You have your main liner, Aaron Paul. Aaron Paul is your main liner on this one. It's like continuation of the story. How many people are going to feed into it? What's the reaction going to be like? And is it worth it for us to do another run? Because you gotta remember, like, all these other streaming services taking a lot from them. So they're trying to find ways to capitalize in other directions. So doing a show like this, based on a show that people loved and have your perspective on it, like it's encapsulating. Like, okay, we can work with this.
It's so funny. All these franchises are just like adapting this like MCU model. Like this sounds very familiar to the Star Wars model, where every year there's supposed to be a different side Star Wars story, quote unquote. It feels like the same way with the Breaking Bad universe, even down to the title. Like it's El Camino, a Breaking Bad story. Like, and it just leaves room to be other Breaking Bad stories in the future.
Well, absolutely. They're all going to be callbacks to one another and the series itself. I mean, as long as they do it in a timely fashion, I think.
Sure, but at the same time, do you feel like the branching off of such a successful property will lessen it if the other spinoff doesn't live up to it, or the movie doesn't live up to it?
That's the bigger issue, realistically. Right. I feel like that's the biggest battle. I mean, I'll cite Game of Thrones again. Like, you have a series that was running in its same course and didn't live up to its own expectations. So, like, it's a possibility. But I mean, if the availability is there to create something based off something someone or people love, why not do it? Go for it. How many times can you remake The Lion King? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, we didn't need that either, but we got it. I watched it. Did you watch The Lion King remake?
Nah.
Horrible.
Yeah, I can't bring myself to.
Beyonce is not an actor. I'm sorry. She's not a voiceover person. Like, it just felt like I was watching, what was that? With Afro.
A Goldmember?
A Goldmember. I felt like I was watching Goldmember. She has like the same tone, no matter like she's excited or sad or how. I'm like, what is this? Yeah, I don't need you to sell me an actor that has a big name or a singer that should be somewhere else. Like, I just need you to sell me someone that's going to create the story that we need.
Sure.
You know?
I guess this is the lesser evil. I guess I would rather have a successful franchise that branches off and tells different individual stories rather than the successful franchise churning out remakes and sequels and
Absolutely.
such.
Absolutely. Original content is a winner for me. I don't need those remake stuffs. Stuffs. That's not even a real word. Listen, I'm going to keep up to date with this one, and I'm still waiting for the Boondocks to come out. Yeah.
Yeah, you better catch up, man. Was next year HBO Max officially launches?
And we got to one of these days we're going to have to sit down and just talk about Joker. I think we need one of those.
Oh yeah, we both have our sharing opinions, which you can find my opinion on the HYPEBEAST.com site about my experience with Joker.
I made up a fake name to just go in there and comment, just letting you know now. I catch you next week.
Of course, man.
Daps on the mic.
Absolutely.
For the latest in entertainment news, follow HYPEBEAST on Instagram or go to hypebeast.com/entertainment.
My name's Jake. I'm an editor here at HYPEBEAST, and this week I'm talking about the recent LVMH investment in Madhappy.
Huh. Now, what does this mean for streetwear?
That's a big question. So just to give you the specifics, what happened was LVMH invested in this Californian streetwear brand called Madhappy. LVMH has done plenty of investments before. They invested in stadium goods. They purchased
250.
That was Farfetch.
Oh,
Farfetch
yes.
purchased stadiums. LVMH purchased Rimowa, which is the suitcase luggage brand.
Gotcha.
And this is kind of interesting. This acquisition of, investment into Madhappy is interesting because it kind of represents a different hybrid of the luxury world and the streetwear world. Because when people talk about that peak streetwear luxury hybrid, they talk about the Supreme Louis Vuitton collab. I think that's still like the high water moment.
Absolutely. 100%.
Right. So what's interesting is you don't have to collaborate with these streetwear brands to bring them into the world of luxury. That's kind of a high bar for streetwear brands.
Absolutely.
You can see with Dior, for instance, like they collaborate and work with creatives like Yoon from Ambush, Matthew Williams from Alix, but those are like established big names. Mm-hmm. Brands like Madhappy are smaller. They're young. They're only 2 years old at this point.
Yeah.
The thing is you can't expect a brand of Madhappy's size, they're small, to have like a Louis Vuitton runway collaboration.
Absolutely.
There's no weight to it. Maybe like a Stussy could or a Palace, but you'd have to get up to that level. So what's interesting is this is kind of a new way for Louis Vuitton and other luxury labels to dip their toe into streetwear brands, bring them into the luxury realm and give them the money they need to flourish without necessarily putting that big collaborative seal of approval on it, if that makes sense.
They're also getting a jump on the brand if they see it has potential.
Right.
So they don't have to wait till it hits their usual like minimum to buy someone out or to invest.
Right.
They're kind of like, okay, well, we can test the waters with these guys and see how it works out because we like their projection so far.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So what's kind of interesting is that Louis Vuitton has done these investments through its luxury ventures branch in the past, and they don't reveal the amount, but what has been reported is that a spokesperson for Louis Vuitton mentioned that they look for brands that are generally making $2 to $5 million a year in revenue as sort of a sign that they're doing well, they're flourishing, and therefore they can use this money, this capital, to increase the brand's vision, the output, stability, they can have more stores, etc. Reportedly, Madhappy's revenue for 2018 was roughly $1 million, which is not an insignificant amount of money. I mean, I'd be pretty pleased with $1 million.
Oh.
I'm sure there's many brands that'd be
very
pleased
happy.
with $1 million, but it's a little bit smaller than what LVMH has been willing to accept in the past. So it must be a good sign that they're already investing, several million euros in them. It doesn't reveal that no one reveals how much their investment is. Madhappy was quiet. We reached out for a statement. They didn't respond, or rather they said no comment more specifically. And LVMH never publicizes the exact amount of the investment.
Which is fair.
But as the spokesperson mentioned in a previous statement, LVMH will usually put anywhere from 2 to 10 million euros in an investment in a brand. So it's safe to say that amount of money went into Madhappy.
Louis Vuitton, Moet, Hennessy.
Yes.
LVMH, for those of you who don't know what that acronym stands for. 1986 it started, or they conglomerated to acquire most of these luxury brands.
Right.
Now, this venture kind of, like we said, streetwear, rolling back into streetwear. This is good for streetwear, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's a smooth transition, like you were saying before, without having the collaboration or the collaboration aspiration yet.
Right.
So you can more or less step or put your toe into the pond, I believe you said, into that realm without it being so far-fetched.
Sure.
Without having to jump over hurdles to get to certain people or know certain people to get into the right rooms, like most people have a hard time doing. I like this. I don't know where it goes from here, though.
Well, there's two ways to look at it, right? Like there's the positive side, there's the negative side. The negative side, you could say, maybe they're selling out. Maybe now they have to bow down to these corporate overlords. It's worth mentioning that Madhappy, aside from the LVMH Luxury Ventures investment, did fulfill this seeding round in March where they received money from a variety of investors that was about $1.5 million. So they've already got investments coming in from all these different sides. It's not just LVMH that they're working to please, so to speak.
The owner of Sweet Greens, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, yeah. The people that founded Sweet Green, the founder of MeUndies, this underwear brand.
So
kind of random, but yeah. The good news, if you're a fan of these brands, is that now they're going to have more money to make more clothes. They're going to have money to expand their worldview. Like Madhappy just opened a store in New York, which is their first location outside of California. Plus, they have a lot of pop-ups planned for the future, most likely. It's a two-way street. There's give and take. You may see more luxury brands investing in these streetwear brands, and maybe they become tame. Maybe they have to clean up their vision to please the investors. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe these smaller brands are going to have a lot more money to work with, a lot more leg room. There's not going to be that stress of balancing money with the product and the editorials and all the things they need to survive in retail.
Yeah, I kind of almost miss the organic feel of a brand up and coming though.
Right.
As someone or brands emerging in New York or the streets of New York or LA, you go in there, you can feel the grit, you can feel the pain, you can feel the hustle, as opposed to working for a year and then getting an investment or getting bought out, and it's like, okay, we've just changed, we have this big store now, it's like a department store, or our mission's kind of changed. I feel like that kind of takes that feeling away from me sometimes, depending on who it is.
I think that comes with a lot of money, right? I mean, a lot of people, they get that big paycheck. They're willing to maybe, I'm not saying that's what Madhappy's doing, but maybe they're willing to make their viewpoint fall more in line with what the luxury brand would want. Maybe they're more willing to parlay to the investors. Maybe. Yeah, maybe it's not that. Maybe it's not a big ask. They're going to
clean
up. Yeah, I mean,
maybe they're just like, okay, listen, we want you to keep what you're doing. We just want to see where you can go with more money.
Sure, but personally, I don't think it's going to change much for the consumers, for you and me. Because, I mean, when you look at, especially what's happening in streetwear, I think the biggest player in the streetwear realm that isn't a brand but is a retailer is Dover Street Market. They're this immense department store that services luxury brands, streetwear brands. They have everything in between. Obviously, it's run by Comme des Garçons and that company, which is completely independent. They don't have any investors. And I think more companies are looking at that playbook and looking at that freedom that they have, and they're impressed, and they're probably going to give these brands a little bit more room to express themselves. I don't think there's going to be any noticeable selling out, so to speak.
How about this? Streetwear as of late, I feel, is a huge joke. I'm going to throw that right there on the table. I feel like everybody has found this folder, and it's like, oh, you're going that route? I'm going to go that route. And I feel like everybody's kind of hopping on the same train as far as marketing, as far as products that they're putting in their stores, as far as brands that they're looking for. Everything kind of just feels cookie cutter, basic. Follow the leader, and whoever's doing it the best, we're going to just follow suit with that. Like, nobody is going out of their way to be super different except for small niche brands, and they're not getting the exposure because they're not doing what other brands are doing, which are the same things. It's this vicious cycle. I mean, maybe I'm just caught up in my own little head here, but
sure. I mean, no, I don't think that's invalid. I think that's definitely. I mean, it's pessimistic, but it's not necessarily wrong. My take on it is there's always going to be interesting independent creators, designers, brands doing cool things and making their own vision come to life by their own playbook. It's just a matter of finding them. And I think in streetwear it can be tough because it's a flooded market right now. There's a lot of brands operating, and it's kind of hard to sift through the brands to get to the cream of the crop, right? But I think there's just so much choice out there. No matter what you like, there's something. And if you see that LVMH is looking into this brand, maybe you say, oh, okay, now I should check them out. Maybe they're doing something different. And if you say, okay, that sounds lame, I don't want to get involved with that, then I think there's still plenty of other options. I think there's plenty of other brands that are doing interesting things. And I think maybe the best way to sift through that and find the stuff that's the most interesting is to look for the retailers that you connect the best with. There's a lot of independent retailers still around from all parts of the globe, in Japan, in Europe, in North America.
I don't even want to tell people what I'm liking these days. I'm at that point where I'm kind of like, I'm kind of inclusive about what I'm wearing, just because I don't want it to become one of those things where it's like, oh, everybody's going to run there and get it. Like,
right. Well, I mean, maybe that's your own problem. You're a little too popular for your own good.
Well, that's not to say that here. So we're not going to go that route. What I'm going to say is it's just one of those things. You watch people kind of, and people won't say anything to you. You're like, oh, what is it that you're wearing?
Yeah.
Like, you're wearing a shirt or a hoodie or whatever. And you go, oh, it's this brand. 2 days later, like, they're on their Instagram and they're posting, hey, check out this. Like, no, that's not the intent here. Of course, you want your brand to grow. The stores that you mess with to have popularity. And of course, they have to make money. Otherwise, how are they going to continue to get product? But at the same time, you kind of want it to stay where it needs to be too.
Right.
Like where it lives and how you like it. Because the second they start getting money, sometimes it becomes a whole nother thing.
Right. And that's what's going to be interesting to see, because I mean, we've seen, corporate interests in streetwear brands in the past. The Carlyle Group, these talks of palace-seeking investors, this has really become the new normal. But I don't know. Like I said, I can't imagine there being a complete dearth of interesting, original creators who are free to create whatever they want. I think there's so much out there to explore. It's just a matter of finding it.
All right. Well, I'm glad that we clarified some of these things here today.
Yeah.
I read the article. I'm in tune with what you're saying, but I feel like I need more. And
of course.
I feel like I'm getting it right now.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to supply the information if possible.
Jake, always a pleasure.
You too.
Catch you next week.
All right.
For the latest in fashion and style, follow HYPEBEAST Style on Instagram or go to hypebeast.com/fashion. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Hype Report. You can find out more about the show and listen to other episodes on hypebeast.com/radio. You can subscribe to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. Leave a comment and let us know what you think about this week's topics. You can reach out to me on Instagram at Mikey Dab, and that's 2 B's. And shout out to the editorial team. I'm Mikey Dab, and thanks for listening to The Hype Report. Any comment, opinion, or suggestion made by any person contained in this episode does not represent HYPEBEAST in any way, and those genuinely are their individual, personal opinion and thoughts towards the topic shared.